Before we dive in today to Resilient Aging Unfiltered, I just wanted to mention that we had some technical issues during the end of the interview with Caleb, Lihn, and Jenny Krulewich of Lihn Law Group. We were able to preserve much of the flow and insights of this valuable conversation. So let's jump in. Hello, welcome back to the Resilient Aging Unfiltered podcast. We have a really fantastic show today, important questions, and two fantastic guests that I'm so excited to share with you. So thank you for being here, Caleb and Jenny.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I
thank you
will
so much for
just
having us.
briefly tell the audience about, for sure, my pleasure. So I'm just going to share a little bit about each of you with the audience, and then we'll jump in. Caleb Lihn, he's a certified elder law attorney specializing in elder law, estate planning, and special needs planning. His work is deeply shaped by personal experience, including navigating his mother's cognitive illness and daughter's complex medical needs. Caleb serves on national and state elder law boards, teaches law students, and is widely recognized for both his legal expertise and compassionate approach to guiding families through complex decisions. Wow, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And then we have Jenny Krulewich. She is a licensed master social worker and client care advocate at Lihn Law Group. She supports older adults and families through complex care and legal transitions, bringing a holistic, deeply compassionate approach with a background in geriatric care management and guardianship. Jenny specializes in coordinating care, advocating for clients, and helping families navigate challenging moments with clarity and support. Wow. What a duo. So maybe in your own words, if you could share what makes the work you do individually and together so important and unique.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, and you mentioned it in your kind introduction, this work is very personal to me. When I was a younger lawyer doing a totally different kind of law, my mom went through some dementia issues. And that really kind of like catapulted me into this journey because even as a lawyer, I had no clue what kind of support I needed even in that moment. And then it was just overwhelming decision after overwhelming decision and how to care for my mom and what care she needed and just complete overwhelm. And felt guilty that I wasn't able to support her, help myself support her. It was just, it was kind of it became an opportunity in the crisis because then I realized, you know what, I can not only learn this for myself, but I could also reshape what I do legally to help other people. And so for a long time, we supported people legally in a lot of different ways related to estate planning and elder law. And then more recently, um, I hearkened back to that journey I had with my mom. And I thought, you know what, there's still, even though I've been doing this legally for a long time, and I have a lot of the answers that I wish I had back then, there's more we could do to support people to make this journey easier from a legal and a support standpoint. And so that's kind of where Jenny came into the picture. And we brought her on the team in July of 2024. And I think we're the only law firm in Arizona that has a full-time social worker on the team. And so we've been able to like kind of expand and be more holistic in the ways that we support our elder law clients.
Wow, that's really powerful. Oh, how old were you when you went through that with your mother?
Actually, I was probably like 28, 29 when it started.
And so you were not only dealing with these big practical decisions that you've never faced before, but also all of the emotional and grief and whatnot, right? So, which I just want to mention that briefly, it's hard to make decisions when you have such heavy grief going on. Your ability to take your experience and help people in a real comprehensive and ethical way while they're going through that is what a amazing offering. So yeah, rare. It sounds like this doesn't really exist anyway, the way you have so innovatively created it and brought in Jenny. So thank you. And Jenny, do you wanna add?
Absolutely. I feel very lucky to have this role and be able to work with families as they're going on the journey of aging and trying to plan for the future to support loved ones, whether it's dementia, a disability. We help families navigate how they're going to find, get, and pay for their care. So really some complicated things that families face when it comes to just deciding what's best for their loved one. It's a bit overwhelming in the Valley, the options when it comes to what's available out there for things like hospice, home care, medical equipment, senior living communities. So we educate ourselves and then we help families make more informed choices about their care.
Great. Can you dig in a little more to the specifics of how that do you call it a program or how does that look in real life?
Yeah, so our service is called Life Care Planning, and it's a holistic approach where we blend together the legal planning, care advocacy, and care coordination. So we have the opportunity to help families think about things for the future, who they're going to appoint to be decision makers for things when they may not be able to make those decisions for themselves due to incapacity. We also help them determine, are there any benefits that they may be eligible for, guiding them through the process to become eligible and then apply and go through the sometimes gruesome benefits applications. It's not always an easy process when it comes to getting through the eligibility and application for Arizona long-term care. So that's one of the things that we help families with through life care planning. But we also are really meant to be a guide and support to the family caregivers that are supporting their loved ones through their journey of, a new diagnosis, whether it's dementia, Parkinson's, Lewy body dementia. There's all kinds of individuals that are having issues when it comes to aging. So we can really support those families and give them resources, put together a plan and support them as the plan develops and as needs adapt and change. We can make sure that they have the resources that they need to get through those moments.
Wow. That's not easy. Uh,
It's not always easy, but it's extremely rewarding and it feels good to be able to help those families. And yeah, I love what we do.
yeah. And what draws you to this, working with this specific population?
So I myself experienced at a very young age my own grandparents going through various forms of dementia. And at the time, my mom was also bringing us up and constantly kind of working with my out of state aunt to try to figure out what
Mhm.
they needed. We would constantly be going on road trips back and forth. And I have a vivid memory as a child of actually eating a bowl of cereal at my grandma's house, and there were bugs in it. And it was just like a very scary moment for me to think like my grandma's not able to do what she used to do. She's not throwing things away
Mhm.
anymore or maintaining the home. So I witnessed at a very young age my mom working through finding a senior living community, working with my aunt to, kind of share the responsibilities of visiting her on a regular basis. And it was not an easy thing. It was kind of awful to watch them both decline and lose all of their abilities. And I tell the families that we work with and the clients that are dealing with dementia that it's a lot like going through the stages of grieving, because when you're losing your abilities, whether it's your memory or your physical abilities, you're going through denial, anger, bargaining, and then sometimes acceptance. Sometimes people don't get there, but I think having the right support and the right time can really help those families work through some of those emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So do you see mostly people in crisis or are there a lot of people who can think and plan ahead for this kind of thing?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think a lot of people unfortunately wait until there's some kind of crisis that triggers them to reach out to a law firm for support. But really, we are working really hard to educate other providers in the community and just the greater community about the fact that being proactive with things like planning ahead, doing estate planning, doing asset protection planning, thinking about long-term care needs before you actually need those things is really, really important and crucial. And it's not something that we're taught in school. So we're working really hard to get the word out and spread the word with education.
Yeah. Amazing. So what are some of the biggest missed opportunities you guys see?
I think that really piggybacks off what Jenny just said. Like the biggest missed opportunity is not, to your earlier question, Dr. Cabral, is not planning or thinking ahead and waiting until there is a crisis. I mean, our preference, Jenny's absolutely right. We have kind of a balance of both. But my major preference would be that we're not having to help people navigate or guide them through a crisis because there's usually so much more we can do that are
Mhm.
more emotionally level and ready for the work when they're not also juggling, an acute crisis. I think the biggest missed opportunity for people is planning ahead and being proactive. And And it doesn't mean that you have to be able to predict the future or know, like, hey, we're going to get sick or we're going to get dementia. There's triggers along the way. Everybody who has dementia at one point was diagnosed with it. That diagnosis, they may have mild symptoms at that point. Plenty of agency and legal capacity left to be able to do the planning that they need to have that discussion. But I think
Mhm.
a lot of people are, it's compounding of fear and avoidance sometimes, and they just want to put their head down, deal with bigger issues in front of them and say, we'll deal with this legal stuff when it's a crisis, or maybe they don't even know. And
Mhm.
so I wish it was just like we could like get on the rooftops and just like scream to everybody. There's just so much more that we could do for people proactively, whether it's delegating decision making so that if dementia or some medical thing advances, we don't have to go to court. Everything's legally set. So, like the
Mhm.
delegation, the hierarchy of who's going to help you is already legally articulated and in place. Or maybe it's, using, and not every client that we help uses our life care planning service. That's, that's kind of a silo of ways
Mhm.
that we help people who need that more broad support. But maybe, someone comes to us, like one of our LCP life care planning clients was fairly early in her diagnosis. And her goal was, she's like, I want to remain at home. And her daughters wanted her to remain at home. And I think that's most people's goal. Most people don't want to go live somewhere unusual or strange to them and have to then learn to call that home. And so we were able to be very proactive, and probably through the work that we did and the resources we connected them with and articulated, I think she's still home.
Mhm.
And I think she stayed home months, if not years longer than she would have been able to had they just done nothing and let mom decline without the supports or the resources or the guidance. I had a case recently where, well, actually it wasn't a case, it was a potential case where someone came to talk to us. Husband had dementia and his needs were progressing. His condition was declining. And they had a financial advisor who knows nothing about the law, who said they were modest resources,
Mhm.
fixed income, both retired, but younger on the retired side, both in their early 70s. And the financial planner's like, you need this to the wife. You need to spend all your money and basically have nothing left so that you can get your husband on all techs because you don't have enough money to pay for your home and your house and you six, seven, $8,000 a month of care for him. So
Mhm.
the wife took basically what they had as their life savings for the rest of their lives on their fixed income and blew it on a bunch of elective things like fixing a roof that wasn't really totally needing to
Yeah.
be repaired yet
Wow.
and doing some stuff on the house. And by the time they got to us, for $300,000 in retirement had become,
Mhm.
and I said, I hate to tell you this, but had I met you before you got that advice from your financial advisor, I could have saved you 98% of your money and still helped your husband qualify for all tax. And so to me, that's like the epitome of a giant missed opportunity because they blew through a chunk of their life savings that they can't get back now. So I think that's the biggest missed opportunity is just people not knowing, not planning, and avoiding until it's too late. And like we talked about earlier, there is a crisis because it just limits what we can do.
Wow. That's really heartbreaking and feels like, yeah, some basic education even. It would be a good starting point, but it is so complicated, and the rules can change.
Totally.
Yeah. It seems like, uh what comes to mind, and this is true for my work to some degree as well, is that as a physician with older adults, it's like the sooner you get in, the better, like across the board. And it seems like there should be some kind of policy change where maybe once you get a diagnosis of a neurodegenerative disease, some of these things you have to get lined up, kind of pushing people to confront these things because it will be such a not only a cost savings, but emotional costs and, psychological and relational, families. I'm sure you see families like falling apart when things like this happen, right? So
It'd be
what would
great if
be
it was
like
like doing your sorry.
yeah, go ahead. No, go.
I was gonna say it would be great if it was something that was just on the list of things that you had to do, like doing your taxes every year, making
Yeah.
sure that you have your ducks in a row for estate planning and your future.
Yeah. And I wonder if you see, I'm sensing a greater interest and appetite from people in like Gen X and younger to get their ducks in a row, to be more aware of like my like Medicare is not paying for my housing when I'm 80 and other things. Are you picking up on that at all with generationally?
Yeah, I think so. I think as you said that, I'm like, yeah, that's true. I think people are, I think maybe I'm being optimistic or like wide-eyed, but maybe like some of that education that we wish we could broadcast out to everybody, maybe it's trickling down a little bit
Mhm.
to the newer, the younger generations as they age into, further into adulthood, and maybe that's sinking in, and people are seeing the struggles now of their grandparents or baby boomer parents and things like that. So I
Mhm.
hope that that's sort of the phenomenon, and maybe it's like sort of an evolution of spreading the information, and we won't have as many crises. At least we'll be able to help people more proactively if people are wising up to that. It's just scary how much info is out there now with AI and Google and people trying to do things themselves, and it's not always the best path. It's a good tool,
Yes.
but not the thing you want to fully rely on.
Yeah. And so you guys have an educational opportunity coming up, right?
We do,
Do you want to
yes.
share that? Yeah, tell us what that's going to entail.
So our annual symposium is coming up on April 16th, and it's an opportunity for professionals in various areas of kind of senior living, senior care in general, to come together for a day of networking and education. So it's a great opportunity for individuals to learn something new and meet someone new.
And we've
Right. And you'll
got
be
continuing
um
education
well,
credits for,
but
I say we have continuing education credits for social workers, assisted living, and nursing home managers, and certified dementia practitioners. And is it case managers, Jenny?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And this will be to equip professionals with more deep knowledge about a lot of what you just mentioned. Is
Yeah,
that
we kind of call it the circle of care. Like we're all caring for aging adults and their families, just with our different technical
Mhm.
specialties, but we're all in this circle of care
Mhm.
together. And in the senior industry, in every state, but in Arizona, and Jenny kind of alluded to this, it's overwhelming, but it's robust, and there's a lot of professionals. And so I saw there's a lot of networking, but not a lot of education. And I would see like, social workers have their things, or nursing home and assisted living managers have their things, and home health has their things, but there's not a lot where the whole circle's together in a room. And so that's kind of what we wanted to do with the symposium, and give birth to something where everyone can come together, because we talk about this fragmented system that we all live in, whether it's, medical or senior care. And it's nobody's fault, but it's fragmented. And so if we can, as we all try to be more holistic, like you with your practice, you're being innovative and progressive and holistic in a lot of ways that traditional medicine hasn't been. And we're doing the same thing with the way we deliver legal services, trying to be more holistic and helping more globally. And so that's sort of what we're putting, our money where our mouth is, with trying to educate and get everybody in the circle of care on board to think bigger and think more holistically. And how can we better care for people, care for families? And so it's just a day of some networking, but largely education, to try to get us all, primed to serve our clients better.
that sounds great. That's
Yeah, that's our
impressive
goal.
if
We
you can
did it
do that.
last year. I was like, everybody pull out at the end of the day. I'm like, everybody pull out your phones. Let's save the date right now.
Yeah.
So I want to
Brilliant.
do that again so we can get it locked in. But
Can you share what's like the basic minimum level of like paperwork and things or forms that we should each have filled out, completed and ready on ourselves by like the age 50?
great question.
If-
Yeah, I
You're good.
will give you the initials kind of stereotypical lawyer answer. It depends.
Okay.
And I really do mean it
Yeah.
depends on your goals. But I think if we strip just to bare minimum, yeah, I think it's crucial that any adult has the essential powers of attorney. And in Arizona, we have three: is financial, healthcare,
Mhm.
and mental health care. All very important, all
Mhm.
crucial. I think that is a bare minimum of what someone should have. Now, if it's important to them, like, hey, I want to make sure that if I pass away, my affairs are handled smoothly, efficiently, keeps my loved ones out of court, then that's going to require a little more. If they say, hey, I want, one of my goals is, hey, I want to make sure that the assets I leave my loved ones are protected from creditors or divorce or bankruptcy or lawsuits, then we start talking about, well, then probably a trust is a good idea for them, a living trust to plan for, protecting and making things easy on loved ones. And then two, if it's like, there's different circumstances. If there's a blended family, I almost always recommend a trust because without planning a blended family, usually the outcome that the law calls for is not what the family would truly want if they were asked. And a lot of people just think things are going to happen the way they're supposed to happen. I don't need to plan for it. So
Mhm.
I think most people should think, certainly have powers of attorney, healthcare directives in place, and probably think about some additional step like a living trust or to a lesser extent, a last will and testament to plan for the easy passage of their assets in a way that makes it easy on their loved ones and protects their loved ones and that inheritance.
Great. Jenny, did you want to add anything?
I think that was well said. Thank you, Caleb.
Great. And so those powers of attorney are all publicly available in each state uh, online, right?
Yeah, and I will say not
Yeah.
all powers of attorney are created equal, but for somebody who's like, hey, I don't really have the money to hire an attorney to get this taken care of, or I'm really scared right now. I just want to get something in place. I think almost every state has those available, basic forms available online for free. And Arizona is, of course, no
Right.
exception. The Arizona Attorney General's
Mhm.
office has a planning kit that has the mental health care power of attorney and a living will. And then strangely, they've carved out the financial power of attorney. So to get that, I just tell people Google if you want like a free basic one that's legal once it's signed. Google Maricopa County Superior Court financial power of attorney. And then that'll pull up a link that has a form for that. So you could theoretically, in just a half an hour, get it all filled out and signed, and bam, you've got all these estate planning powers of attorney in place, valid legal, and you didn't have to pay any money except possibly a notary to get it
Mhm.
done. Now, if someone's needs are more complex, you're probably going to need more robust powers of attorney. I taught a class through the state bar to estate planning attorneys last year on what estate planning attorneys should know about long-term care. We spent probably half the session talking about what they should think about including in powers of attorney. There's a lot of estate planning attorneys, if they don't also do elder law, they're not thinking like the full continuum of life or into the aging. And so we
Mhm.
often in our elder law practice, we get powers of attorney in that were done previously, and they're missing crucial things that we would need to help with, like long-term care planning or other things. And it's like, if that person has capacity, we could revise it. We can do a new one. But if someone comes in and that loved one's already unable to make decisions or have that testamentary capacity, then we're stuck with that power of
Mhm.
attorney. And sometimes that involves going to court to get the tools that we need that weren't authorized in that power of attorney. So that's sort of what I mean when I say all powers of attorney aren't created equal.
Mm.
But I don't want that to discourage people from just having something in place now.
Right, I have a couple follow-up questions. So, I feel like if everyone could leave this interview just at least going and getting those forms done for themselves. And then, but I think about practical things like where do you recommend saving or how to save these so your family can access them?
Yeah, I think just having them somewhere safe at home where and telling your loved ones, communicating with your loved ones that, hey, we did this, um, I did this, or your father and I, or your mother and I, we did this. So
Yeah.
there's communication and knowledge, and say, hey, these are in our file cabinet at home, or they're in our desk at home, or they're in our safe at home. The old school way used to be putting it in the safe deposit box. I advise against that now because sometimes when there's an emergency, you don't have the key. It provides a delay or an inability to access those important pieces.
Mhm.
Also, there is a healthcare registry in Arizona where you can register your healthcare documents. So your healthcare, mental health care power of attorney and your living will, and those go into the electronic medical record as part of the state registry. So we do that for all of our clients. I recommend doing that too. That's free. If it's not free, it's nearly free. And then you can
Mhm.
Google that, Arizona State Health Registry, and there's just a form you fill out, submit copies of documents, and they send you back a little credit card size thing for your wallet or purse
Oh, wow.
to say, hey,
Cool.
not only do I have healthcare documents, but they're online in the state registry. And the thought is that emergency responder, people in the medical field can access those more readily if someone doesn't have them on them. So again, it's all about preparation and communication, I think, making sure that those are available.
Right. Sometimes those little practical steps are what keep people from doing these very basic things and behavior change, just like hearing that. So thank you for sharing. So if we could talk about this concept of capacity, which comes up in my space, my field, not infrequently, but a lot of people get this confused. So if you guys could talk about that and compared with competency, and then I have some more questions about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great question. And it's, I think, an area of great confusion. So, yeah, so competency is not something that we think about it in the terms of, is somebody been deemed incompetent by their physician, by their medical team, so that it activates or it triggers this power of attorney. So now they can't make their own financial, healthcare,
Mhm.
or legal decisions. So, we have to think about that from a legal standpoint. But where our wheels from a legal standpoint are spinning more is on, what you said, sort of capacity. And there's a specific, there's different standards of capacity, but there is a standard for testamentary capacity in Arizona. Well, it's pretty much the same in every state. But that level of capacity that someone needs to be able to execute or sign a power of attorney or a living trust or a last will and testament. And it's the burden to do that's very low. It's kept low on purpose because the policy behind the law is we want people to be able to do their planning as far into their life and into a progressing condition as possible. And it's much lower than, the capacity to contract. That's a higher level of capacity. So all that you need to know in Arizona to have that capacity is like, for a power of attorney, you need to know who you are. So understand your identity and be aware of your identity. Know what powers you're delegating. Just generally, am I delegating financial decision making, healthcare decision making, and who you're delegating that to. And if you know those three things, then you have the ability to execute, or your loved one has the ability to execute powers of attorney. A lot of people think just because
Mhm.
there's a dementia diagnosis, that halts the ability to do estate planning. It absolutely doesn't.
Mhm.
Now, there are people with dementia that don't have capacity to create or amend estate planning. There's also people who don't have dementia who maybe don't have capacity because of other things, but that diagnosis alone isn't the trigger for capacity. And then for more complex planning, like a will or a trust, basically you just need to know who you are, kind of a general sense of what you own and who the boundaries of your affection or who your loved ones are that you may be passing things on to. And if you know those, you can do a will or a trust. And then, in fact, there's case law in Arizona that says you can have a guardianship placed over you, which means the court deems you incompetent and unable to make decisions, but still
Mhm.
be able to do estate planning. So just because you're incompetent
Nice.
is a higher level doesn't mean you're incapacitated. So maybe it doesn't seem logical on its face. It's nuanced very carefully to, I think, allow that policy of people doing estate planning as far into their lives or their disease journey as possible.
So, Jenny, can you share any? Thank you for all that explanation. Real life examples of where capacity wasn't determined, or there wasn't a power of attorney in place, and then that capacity issue came into question, and it wasn't totally clear, but maybe somebody was doing something questionable, who had, who was older, and how do you deal with that?
Great question. So, we actually just started working with a family that's dealing with something just like this. So,
Oh, wow.
we are currently working with this family in our life care planning service to be able to help guide them through and help assess, do they have the capacity to do new estate planning documents, or do we need to take like the guardianship conservatorship route? So the wonderful thing about life care planning is we go out and we do an assessment. We meet with, if they're at a community or facility, who their care team is, and get lots of information about how they're doing, what the concerns are,
Mhm.
when they're expected to return to baseline, what that might look like. So we can support and advocate for the family depending on what the needs are. And in this particular situation, the family knows that, their mom is going to need long-term care, need like a skilled nursing facility level of care due to her physical issues as well. Currently, it sounds like she's, bed bound and getting help with transferring. So we will be visiting soon to be able to get more information and speak with her ourselves to help determine after she had her stroke, does she have the capacity because she is still working, with speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, regaining capacity after her stroke. So, we don't know what that's going to look like yet. Only time will tell. So it's great that we're involved now and we'll be visiting quarterly to stay involved and support the family through, figuring out how we need to get the goals accomplished either through estate planning or, going to court for guardianship and conservatorship, and then guiding the family through the process of application for Arizona long-term care to help them pay for the community care that mom will need moving forward.
Got it. So can you elaborate on why she had powers of attorney in place and she had a stroke?
I believe she had some pretty basic ones in place, but not
Okay.
not necessarily, I think, all of the information that she needed to have. So I think she might have had like a medical power of attorney and financial power of
Mm-hmm.
attorney, but not mental health care.
Mm-hmm.
So we're working through that. There's also, I believe the documents were not as thorough as they needed to be, didn't include the specific powers for the agent to be able to do long-term care planning. So we're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to kind of work through that piece right now.
I see. Okay, got it. So, what about there's a lot of adult children, maybe midlife, these 40s, 50s, whose parents are maybe getting less safe to live alone and refusing to, or maybe blatantly unsafe. Maybe like, one of the parents has died and the other one is living alone and they're 90 and clearly having some challenges and refusing to. I'm sure you hear this not infrequently, and the adult child is trying to figure out what to do. Like, and maybe just in general, I'd love to give, like, the adult children would
Absolutely.
yeah.
We have a case that we're working on right now that's just like that. There's some adult children involved that are advocating for mom, and the goal is to keep her safe at home for as long as possible. But she does have Alzheimer's, and, things are starting to get more and more challenging when it comes to kind of helping her with her activities of daily living. Communicating with her is not as easy as it used to be because she's refusing help with certain things. I think when we're thinking about, I'm kind of going back to what I said earlier with the stages of grief, I think, a lot of people, when they have dementia, lose insight and then they're kind of stuck in that denial phase. So I think that's kind of where she is at. And, I'm working with the family now on connecting them with a lot of different resources for things like home security systems, something that's connected with, a lifeline or something that has GPS tracking for any kind of wandering behaviors, because it does become very
Mhm.
scary very quickly. And we are also proactively looking into options for senior living communities and just seeing what's out there, because we're all aware that with the illness progressing, it may be something that's needed pretty quickly.
Yeah. So do you use certain validated measures to determine if they're safe to live alone? Because, I of course have my own ways I determine that, and give advice. Yeah, so I'm curious about that and how you incorporate medical evaluation.
Great question. So I, as a social worker, always refer to physicians and really encourage the family members to be keeping the care team updated on the individual's progress. So where they're at in terms of various behaviors, if they are refusing things like bathing, because that's really important when it comes to hygiene and health. If they are, doing any unsafe behaviors like wandering, and sharing that information with the physicians to determine, is this something that medication and home care can help with, or is it time to explore a higher level of care? So we do defer a lot of times to the medical professionals to really help make that determination. But I always provide my input and thoughts as well.
Yeah, great. Do you feel like, if you would be candid about this, do you feel like the physicians or healthcare providers are weighing in a safe way, or do they tend to lean towards trying to support the person's independence and autonomy at the risk of unsafe things happening? I'm just curious what you see.
Great question. I think it really varies. It depends on the situation. I've seen providers that are very proactive in terms of, it's time to start looking for a higher level of care. And I've seen others that are very much kind of aligned with their patient's goals to be more independent and stay at home. So I think it really depends a lot on the individual provider.
Yeah. Well, we're not trained really in incapacity assessments, except no, for me, I was in psychiatry residency, but otherwise I wasn't. And so it's kind of like you learn on the fly when you're running around as a resident and may or may not do it well for most. So it's interesting. And so, yeah, so your roles are so important. What you're doing is such a value then and a gap across the board. So, yeah, that's good. Thank you. And it makes me think about what is seems so important is just to have to open up conversation. And so it's like making sure people know what they need to be thinking about and then guiding them towards resources or those things depending on what their specific issues are. But everyone ideally would address these things and early and then keep reevaluating at some frequency, right? And so, but what I find, and I bet you guys will say the same thing, is that the families that do the best are the ones who have the most open, transparent, honest conversations. And the person with the brain disease is involved as much as possible. And they're obviously very involved early on and even, until the final stages often. So and people really, that's therapeutic in so many ways to have those conversations and for other family members who aren't even involved, maybe directly like grandchildren. They feel that support and container around the people and family. And that's really powerful and hard to measure. Yeah. So you guys provide a space to have these conversations. And I'm sure you hear lots of things that aren't directly related and probably in a topic that's been coming up in my world is things like physician assisted dying, which we're not going to get into that, but like that's like getting to be more of a topic. And so I'm sure, these things come up. And so in any case, it's so valuable to have that space. So I just want to thank you for the amazing, progressive, innovative things you're doing. And I imagine it's catching on and maybe other practices, other law firms, or at least considering this and bringing on a social worker as like the magic sauce of the elder law experience. What came to mind is it's an investment that you're going to get a really high return on, and you'll end up paying a lot more if you do a shoddy job and the cheapest at the beginning, or you wait and wait, and then it's just who knows, anything could happen. Thank you both again for your time and this important conversation. Everyone, please take to heart what they're saying and get things done early and reach out to get the high quality and best support and information personalized for you. Thank you again, listeners. And please rate, review, like, and subscribe. And come to check out Brain Love at mybrainlove.com. We'll see you next time.
Thank you again to Caleb, Lihn, and Jenny Krulewich for such a thoughtful and practical conversation. So many take-home points that we can implement immediately. If you'd like to learn more about their work, you can visit Lihn Law Group at lihnlawgroup.com. That's spelled Lihn. They specialize in elder law, estate planning, and life care planning with a strong focus on supporting families through complex transitions with their innovative and progressive and holistic approach. I also wanted to mention that if this conversation resonated with you, I highly recommend checking out their upcoming Elder Law Symposium. It's a full-day event bringing together experts across healthcare, legal, and advocacy spaces to share practical strategies and insights for supporting older adults. And that's happening on April 16th, 2026 at the Glendale Civic Center in Arizona. It's designed for both professionals and families who want to better understand and navigate the complexities of aging and be well prepared. So make sure to check that out. It's going to be fantastic. They do this every year. And as always, if this episode was helpful, share it with someone who might need it. And we'll see you next time.